Hello and welcome. So we've got a load of stuff to talk to, even though crypto's been a bit dull actually this month, which yeah, it's been a bit surprising, but there's still things going on which is quite interesting, and there's things that I'm thinking about. I know there's things that Exodus is thinking about, but before we get into that, let's find out how Exodus has been. How you doing, Exodus?
I'm doing good, normal. Looks like we have a little Bitcoin crash today. That's nothing we haven't seen before. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. A lot of that is the stuff that's going on over in Iran at the minute, which we're not a political show, so we won't get too much into that. But yeah, it looks like we're probably in for a week of going downwards a little bit. I suspect oil's going to go through the roof apparently. But yeah, no, I'm not too bad. No, like I said, we're already kicking this off. Right, we're 20 people tuned in and ready to go. Now, Exodus has just brought some really cool news to the stage. So I'm going to put the stage on. I'm going to let Exodus explain what's going on here. But I think a lot of our viewers will be ridiculously excited about this. So let me just switch the stage over and let's talk about this.
Yeah, so they're making some progress on adding Monero to Bison Wallet for, atomic swaps between other coins, including stable coins. Um, and from what I understand, this is still using the external wallet type. I'm not exactly sure if they're going to choose another way to do this. Maybe they'll choose how Cake Wallet does it, where you can just sync from an external server, uh, an external node to get your wallet up and running. So that I think that's still up in the air, and it's kind of one of those things where you're choosing your level of decentralization. Do you want to run your own node, or do you want to look at someone else's? But I think it's really cool to see this progress being made, and to know that this is going to come, and Decred's going to tap into the world's largest privacy coin, and I think their community is going to be more receptive towards Bison Wallet and atomic swaps more so than any other project other than Decred. So I think this is a really good development, and I'm happy to see them making progress on this.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about the Monero ecosystem coming to Bison Wallet for a long time in DCR decks, and so many of Decred users they pretty much hold three coins from what I can see, and that's Decred, Monero, and Bitcoin. So it makes absolutely sense to kind of have that on the platform. I don't necessarily mind the direction that they're taking with putting a full node up there first. I think for most people that want to do this properly and run um, market makers and things like that, probably the full node is the way to go. But for us people that just want to go in and kind of just swap casually, we really do need that kind of that cake wallet approach where we can connect to an RPC rather than having to download and maintain. I think they noticed something like 200 or 300 gigabytes now, so it's quite a substantial download to maintain. Whereas their kind of RPC model is a lot more streamlined, and certainly the cake wallet guys seem to have that down and nailed. But I think a lot of people will be interested in seeing Monero come to Bison Wallet, and I believe they've already done a few test swaps, which is quite interesting to see if it works. So yeah, it looks like it's coming out. I suspect we're still a little ways away, but it's nice to see that the kind of wallet's there. And even if we get a release where it's just the wallet, I think a lot of people will appreciate that as well. So yeah, thanks for bringing that to our attention, Nexus. I think that's exciting stuff.
Yeah, I really hope they can find a workaround, because a Monero full node as of recently is around, I think, 240 gigabytes, and then the prune node is around 90. So it's quite large, and probably takes a good minute to sync that. Um, you know, we're quite lucky with Decred, how the DCRD full node is. I think it's what, only like 8 gigabytes still, despite being out for over 8 years. Uh, in most other projects, it is not like that. It's not quick to sync. It's quite large. So really hoping they find a solution that is one where that makes getting a Monero wallet attractive to people.
Yeah, I mean, for this show, I've been doing quite a bit of research on the Monero wallet actually, and based on Dave's his comment, which we're going to go into deeper discussion, and you know, running the prune node definitely makes it a little bit better for sure. Like I say, where you are only downloading um, one 1/3 of the blockchain, rather than having to download the full blockchain. Whereas, and I think Decred is, the full node is about 14 to 16 gig, if I remember rightly. It's growing. It's growing at about 1 gig a year, which is quite interesting. So yeah, it's getting there, isn't it? I mean, we're approaching 10 years old in February, and to have a really efficient blockchain that's still in its infancy in terms of how many gigabytes it is, being a 14 to 16 gigabyte platform is still remarkably incredible, I think. Right, let's change this one back over. So hold on, I still haven't worked out how to do this properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just briefly bring up Dave C's comment. So for anyone that didn't read this, it's well worth a read. It's well worth going into. And he hits some really nice points. And the good thing about listening to people like Dave C and seeing what they have to say is he really kind of shares a lot of the technical insights. And I like the way that he's so unbiased with his information. And for you guys that want to read this, I've actually posted a comment in the YouTube chat. I don't know if it's come through on Twitter or not, but if you want to read that, that's where it is. I've also put it at the top of my profile on Twitter as well. But he really does go into some really nice kind of information regarding both Decred and Monero. And for us people that kind of maybe not as technical, well, definitely not as technical as Dave C. I mean, to have it broken down in this way is absolutely incredible. And he literally goes into most things. So here's the original post from Monero Pepe, who kind of proposes that he's a normie and he's just going to do some research into Decred because people have asked him to. Now, I don't know about you, Exis, but the first thing I thought to myself, for anyone that wants to do research into a coin now, why wouldn't you just use Grok? If you know absolutely nothing, you can build up a really nice foundation just by saying to Grok, hey, can you tell me the top 10 things about this project? I mean, I used to do a lot of my research very fundamentally by going to every single website, every single blockchain and looking into each things. But there are so many blockchains to follow that actually becomes quite a hard task. And this is one area that I really like AI, where AI, I think, has changed the way that I do a lot of my initial research now. I mean, what are your general thoughts on this post and the way that he approached his initial investigation?
My general take was maybe he did use some form of AI to do this, but he asked the AI to be really kind of harsh with its review, because I don't know, it didn't come off as super genuine to me. But I think he got a lot wrong, and I was really happy for Dave to kind of come in and correct a lot. And really, his post was educational even for me. And I think if you scroll down to what Dave kind of said, one thing I found really intriguing was how he spoke of Decred's privacy, in his view, almost being equal to Monero's, because the general idea is that Monero privacy amazing, Decred it's opt-in, so it's not great. But he talked about all those different trade-offs you have, with the default privacy, and how Decred's privacy is quantum resistant, how the chain is still audible. He made so many great points on the strengths of Decred's privacy, and along with everything else. But yeah, the review of Decred by Monero Pepe wasn't very accurate, unfortunately, and it was a little bit, it was like, oh, I don't understand the hybrid proof of work, proof of stake, therefore it's prone to bugs and it's dangerous. And it was like, nothing has happened in over 8 years. Like, how can you make these claims? And there's definitely a little bit of maximalism in there. And I don't think he ever replied back to Dave's counterpost, which is funny.
It just, I mean, in this day and age, it really doesn't serve anybody to not do proper research. And that was the first thing that I noticed about his post, where it was very flippant. Oh, it's got governance, but it's probably rubbish. Or, it's got this hybrid proof of stake, proof of work, but it probably doesn't use the proof of stake to secure the system. And it's like, come on, man. It's the rewards are so low for miners. How can it possibly be secure? And and even if you run the most basic Decred analysis through Grok, Grok actually does a really good job of telling you about all these parts, even if you ask it very, very minimal. So I think, it I don't know, it just doesn't, this Maximus stuff, it just absolutely, it's not genuine, and it doesn't push forward to good narratives. I know you want your coin to win, and everyone should want their coin to win, of course. But if you can't have an open conversation, an open debate for how this stuff works, you're basically feeding a machine of absolute nonsense. And I think, who does that really benefit? If I hold Monero and I hold Decred or whatever, I actually want the best information I can possibly get, because at the end of the day, it's an investment. So you want to be making sure that you understand what the threats are. So when something comes up, think, okay, is Decred protects against that? And you only got to look at what's happening, or the potential of what's happening in Iran. And once again, not a political show, but if they do succeed in cutting off oil supplies and the oil goes through the roof, what's the first things that's going to be hit by that? Things that heavily consume energy. And you look at the ASIC miners. There's no way that if an energy shortage happens, that will maintain that level of kind of ASIC resistance, or not. No, that's the wrong term, but that level of mining hardware. A lot of people will have to start going back. And this is, these are some of the things that I particularly like about Decred, is they really have thought about all of these different mechanisms, all of these different attack vectors, to say, okay, if this happens, what does Decred look like? And when we changed the mining algorithm from being an ASIC only mining algorithm to what is now a GPU and possibly CPU, but not really CPU, it becomes a lot more efficient to run. We don't require specialist hardware, and it can run in the background. And obviously, one of the big things is it doesn't require huge amounts of hash to be equally as secure, which is an absolute incredible mechanism. And the way Dave put that was brilliant, really. Just before I let you take over again, but in terms of the privacy, Dave highlighted three kind of trade-offs. So the first one was the inflation prevention. The second one was the ease of changing the cryptographic primitives, and the third was the pruning mechanism. And sorry, the fourth was ease of use. And the one area that Monero come out top was that ease of use, where Monero could just turn on their privacy. Sorry, their privacy is already turned on, and a user doesn't have to turn it on. They don't have to go into it. They use it as default. And that was the one area that kind of Decred users have to kind of get, if they want privacy, they have to go in and they have to turn on. And anyone that's used Bison Wallet knows exactly how simple that is. Literally just click a button.
Yeah, absolutely. There were a few other weird things in that post. I believe he said because there was a 21 million coin cap, all it did was benefit the early holders, which I thought was really funny. But it's great to see Dave being active on Twitter, and I believe, I don't know if you scroll down, you can see how many people saw that post. It was, I think, several thousand at least. But
look at the size of this.
It's just these kind of old school truth bombs, because Dave used to be quite active on Reddit. People would ask a question and they would kind of do something similar, where they would make like a false presumption about Decred, and he would come in and completely derail them with math and facts, and it was just like, whoa, okay, blown out. But that's awesome to see. It's like, maybe Dave should take a break from DCRD work and just like post on Twitter. That'd be a fun job.
Yeah. It gives the community ammunition, because a lot of us, especially when it comes to Monero, Monero, for me, the privacy is a complex beast. But Dave has kind of really pointed me in the right direction with how it works with this post, and it allowed me to do further research, which before that I wasn't able to do. I couldn't really get my head around it. It's even like the pruning mechanism, which here it is here. So even the pruning mechanism, I didn't understand the fact that the way that Monero prunes is it basically shares out all of the ring signatures across several nodes. So when you download a pruned version, you literally just download one of them and you can operate. And I thought that was quite interesting. I didn't particularly understand that before. most pruning mechanisms tend to have these archived areas. So they have a flag that says, hey, you can prune from here or something like that. And he also highlighted the fact that Monero's pruning is already better than what Bitcoin has. Apparently in Bitcoin's pruning, the user that has to download the full node first, and then it has to work out where it wants to prune from, which I thought was incredible. I would be interested to know what the future of Decred's pruning looks like. And I know Dave did say, so for instance, in Monero's case, they always have to maintain 1/3 of the chain. So if the chain gets to 300 gigabytes, a prune node will be 100 gigabytes. If the chain gets to 600 gigabytes, the prune node will be 200 gigabytes. And the one thing Dave did say in this post is it doesn't need, Decred doesn't need pruning because it is so small, as we said right at the beginning, it's like, 12 to 16 gigabytes or something like that. But when it does have it, no matter how big the chain gets, it can remove all of the used UTXOs and actually reduce the chain to just several hundred megabytes, which is incredible. So you get this terabyte chain, for instance, and then you can prune it down to a few hundred megabytes, which I think that's incredible. And that's certainly the way that I think will future-proof blockchains. And if you think longer than 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you start looking at the kind of 50 years plus, it doesn't take long to realize that even in Bitcoin's infancy of 16 years, the node now is well over half a terabyte. So by the time it gets to 30 years, you're looking at a terabyte of data. And same goes for Monero, and same goes for pretty much any other popular chain. And things like Solana, I think they're producing a terabyte a lot more frequently. And I'd hate to say that it's a year, but it certainly is a lot more frequently. And it's, if you want to remain sovereign, if you want to kind of have every user on the platform being able to run a full node, pruning is going to be absolutely vital, I think.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that to see if they can get it that small and to see how fast everything syncs and how many people decide to spin up a few full nodes at their home because it's so easy to do. But yeah, that was just an excellent post. If you haven't read the post, it's pretty easy to find. I think just go to Dave's Twitter account, Real Dave CGH, I believe, and you can find the post by clicking replies. He also had another post talking about Decred scaling and how we're already doing thousands and thousands of microtransactions via Bison Relay, because with every message sent on Bison Relay, it's actually a transaction using the Lightning Network, because every message costs some amount of Decred. So we're already doing thousands of these microtransactions every single day, which is super interesting to point out, and especially with Bison Relay community is currently quite small. But to think that can scale massively is kind of amazing.
Excuse me. Yeah, this is what a lot of people don't also realize is because of the Lightning Network, Decred's Lightning Network, we actually have this off-chain capacity, this privacy for transaction in the thousands, which never gets seen on chain. The only thing that gets seen is the channel setup and the channel closing, and everything that happens in between is pretty much invisible. But when you look at Bison Relay, I mean, not so much last few weeks, it's been quite quiet over on Bison Relay, but more often than not, you will see quite a few group chat posts. You'll see quite a few individual posts. You'll see some of the news feeds as well. And even we've got the AI now. And this week, I don't know if you saw it, but I generated a video using AI bot, which was okay. I mean, I haven't really got my head around how to generate videos on an AI yet, but it's quite interesting. But all of that stuff is off chain. It's not adding to the bloat of Decred. And yeah, literally thousands of microtransactions that cost users practically nothing. And it's absolutely incredible. One other point I wanted to make, and specifically towards the Monero, and I reluctantly call them trolls, but there are certain members of the Monero community that definitely troll Decred people. And some of the arguments I've seen generally revolve around three things. One is Monero's privacy. The second is the transaction count. They always say to me, "Oh, but yeah, we've got loads more transactions, loads more activity happening." And the third, which eludes me now, what was the third thing that they always kind of troll me with? But I'd say it was fair launch. Yeah, they always say about their fair launch compared to Decred's launch. In my opinion, I think Decred had a pretty decent launch. Yeah, it wasn't the Bitcoin fair launch, if you like, but even when you point out that Satoshi managed to mine 1 million coins before anyone else gets involved, I think having a fair launch is pretty difficult. But one thing that I always say back to the Monero guys is, yeah, you had this perfect fair launch. There's no ifs or buts. Monero's launch was pretty impeccable, but they've got this tail end thing going on, which is going to impact the fairness of the protocol a lot more than a fair launch, I think. But yeah, those were just my 3 points on that one. If I digressed anyway.
Yeah, they also don't like the concept of voting and governance because people hear the word governance and they're like, oh, that's really bad. And I guess maybe even something like the treasury they don't like. I don't know. There's a lot of things they don't like, but that's fine. They can have their own opinions. Decred's doing something very differently. It's approaching this kind of cypherpunk vision very differently than Monero. So the concept of the DAO, and speaking of that vision, hopefully we see Aaron's proposal soon. For those curious, he did have another child, so he's been preoccupied in dealing with that. But he said the proposal will be coming soon, and I think that's going to be a really exciting event for the Decred community to see how what direction they want to go in.
Yeah, well done, Aaron, and I hope it's all going well. And I'm optimistic for you, man. But a few weeks of having a kid, you're hardly over the hard stuff yet. Changing nappies and all the rest of it, I tell you. But yeah, great stuff, and I'm generally looking forward to that. But no, good point on the governance. In actual fact, that was one of the points that the guy did make, wasn't it? That he said that because of Decred's voting system and proof of stake, the majority of the power goes to those people, those that have the money. And I really liked Dave's response. Let me just see if I can see what Dave said to that, because I thought it was brilliant actually. He said basically that yes, it definitely goes to the power of the stakeholders, and stakeholders become the wealthier parties. But his take on that is, actual fact, isn't that the same with pretty much every mechanism you see in crypto? So for instance, if you have a pure proof of work system, what is the difference in letting the proof of work miners mine all the coins compared to letting the stakeholders, the coin holders, actually have some of those coins? What are your thoughts on that? Would you say that is any different? Would you say that the miners are less wealthy because of that?
Sorry, could you repeat that first part?
Basically, they were saying that the governance and staking system centralizes all the wealth to the stakeholders. So basically, when new coins come out, because stakeholders can validate the blocks and they can vote and all the rest of it, they basically get some of these new coins. And at the moment, if you're a Decred holder, and remember Decred is 21 million coins maximum supply, at the moment you're getting, for every time a ticket votes, you're getting approximately 1 Decred, 1.3 Decred, I think it is.
Well, it's all about skin in the game and being a long-term holder and believing in the project. So if you've been staking your Decred since the beginning and you really believe in this idea, I don't see why you shouldn't be rewarded for securing the network, being a part of the governance process. I think that's all very valid.
Yeah,
and as we've seen, people are selling. People are selling a lot. If you look at all the buying on the DEX, I mean, it's like hundreds of thousands of Decred is being bought over the past 6 or 8 months. people are selling their Decred, so it's not all just being, staked and hoarded. If you think Decred's being hoarded, you're wrong. Like a lot is being sold, and I think it's going to reach a point where there is that supply shock because obviously only so much can be sold.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to final up on that point, a lot of people say, yeah, but the miners are better off getting all of the reward because um, they've got overheads, whereas coin holders don't. And that's something that I fundamentally disagree with. I think coin holders have definitely got overheads. If you've taken the risk to hold the coin, and you are sat there watching it go down month after month, you're definitely just as responsible. You're definitely just as um, volatile as a miner would be. And from what I've seen, this does tend to be the case. Like you said about people selling, a lot of those coins are coming from what was the old mining system still, and we're still kind of a long way from getting a core group of holders. So at what was the price this morning, $14 I think it is. At $14 anybody can still get into Decred. This idea that it's centralizing into the hands of a few, I just think that's absolute nonsense. If you wanted to buy a ticket today, it would cost you, I think it's $2,000, and you could have a ticket. Now that to me, if you bought an ASIC today, you're probably talking about $5,000. And I don't know how quickly you could mine Bitcoin with a single ASIC. Probably not very. But those are still overheads. Having to buy a ticket and wait for it to kind of and wait for it to mature so you get your reward. Yes, yeah, I think so. I've never really bought into that argument that I've never really bought into that argument that proof of stake doesn't work. And I think if you want a really good system, you have to include the coin holder into it. If you don't include the coin holder into it, what's the incentive? You're kind of wishing and hoping that you don't get diluted all the time. You are getting diluted. So no, I like that. I like that a lot. What else was you just saying?
Let's see. The price of a ticket right now is about $3,000. So
3,000.
yeah, and so we have an exchange rate of $13.30, and then the ticket price is kind of high, about 250 Decred. So hopefully the ticket price does fall to around, and maybe a ticket will be about $2,500. But obviously the ticket price jumps, around a lot, and a lot of people buy those dips. But really interesting, price movement here. Bitcoin falling. We were holding that kind of $14, $15 range for a while there. Treasury is still worth about $12 million, which is awesome. So we've been kind of in this lower range for a while, and I think in a lot of other projects the treasury would be eaten up pretty fast, but we're quite conservative with the treasury spending, and the treasury is only growing, which is really great to see.
I mean, I look at quite a few treasuries, but the one that I follow or did follow quite a bit was the Nano Treasury. Now they literally, all of their coins went into circulation from day one, and they put I'm probably going to get this wrong. So if there's Nano people listening, I apologize for getting wrong, but I think it was 7 million Nano into their treasury, and it literally took about 6 years, and it's completely drained. If you look at the wallets now, they're completely drained. There's like 1,000 Nano left in them. Which, when you look at Decred's treasury, and because it didn't all get mined in one go, and because 10% of the block reward is going in there for every single block, it's gradually building, and it shows the responsibility. When I joined the project, this is a while ago now, 2019 or 2020, something like that, the treasury was 600,000. And I remember thinking then, wow, this is going to get zapped up really quick if we don't act responsible. And since then, even though we've always been in these kind of, since I've joined it, I've only seen one bull market where we went up to 200, and then since then, since becoming a contractor, it's gone down, and the treasury has just kept building, which is absolutely incredible. And the other matrix that I always look at when I'm trying to justify if people are still interested in Decred is the number of coins being staked. Now, there are currently, hold on, where's that? There it is. 16,800,000 coins in circulation out of the 21 million, and over 10 million are being staked. Now, if that's not a good signal, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I just sent you a pretty funny Jake meme on Element. You're muted.
Sorry about that. You guys thought meat space voting worked. There you go. And that is talking about.
It's like, you guys just learned that voting doesn't really work. It took you this long. I think this is something Jake has talked about in the past, how you ultimately we should be voting directly on issues rather than electing some bureaucrat who kind of does whatever they want once they're in power or office. And this is, obviously what's going on. We're not going to be political here, but what's going on with the Iran conflict is very upsetting to many people, and it's very divisive, and it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. But it certainly makes an argument for real on-chain voting where your vote actually matters and counts. And that's something we can, attest to with Decred. It works. It's worked for 8 years. You get a real vote for only $3,000.
Yeah. Well, when you look at Decred system, and I know I've said this many times, but it's absolutely incredible how it works. And the idea that, if you put this into local government, for instance, and the idea that a local government in England, at least, they get people's council tax. So we pay something like £200 a month in council tax. That goes to local government for all kinds of services, which accumulates over the year for a pot. And that pot, obviously, it becomes quite substantial, but you never get to see, outside of what they outline that goes to the police, the fire department, ambulances and things like that. Outside of that, they never outline actually what's being spent on what. And if you brought the Decred system in that said, hey, we're going to charge you £2 million for this road to be fixed, and I don't know if you're the same over there, but our roads are pretty terrible at the minute. There are potholes everywhere. They take an absolute age to do anything, and the roads are pretty terrible. But if they put up a proposal, hey, we're going to spend £2 million on this, who wants it? And then if it was successful, for instance, and then for it to kind of be, okay, they do the work, they validate it online, boom, yeah, the work got done, let's pay it. You would get out of these scenarios where the work just doesn't get done, or the expenses go well overboard. More often than not, if a contractor takes on some work in this country, the price of that work doubles almost instantly. So that they don't have the incentive to come in on par. They always quote lower and then go over. Whereas with Decred system, it's like, well, you can't go over because that's how much the proposal is. That's how you've said you're going to do this work. You said the money that you want. You said how long it's going to take. You either do it and get paid, or you don't do it and you don't get paid, and somebody else takes on the contract. And when you think about that, a lot of problems could be solved, especially in local infrastructure. And I can't really specify for anything else, but in local infrastructure, a lot of things could be solved just by having a Decred-esque kind of system. I think Decred really, really hit the nail on the head with this stuff.
Yeah, Decred spending, despite having kind of this developer tax, is incredibly frugal. And like I said, the treasury is actually growing. The Decred protocol is not in debt like most world governments. They're not in some sort of massive debt, and I think that's really great to see. And they're working on some really interesting things. Off the top of my head, the Bison wallet DEX, the AI bots on Bison Relay, all continuously improving the protocol, looking for bugs, fixing bugs. What else have we got going on? Where the Bison Relay Lightning Network, I think, is one of the best.
Yeah.
They're working on Cake Wallet. They're working on BTC Pay Server. Yeah.
Just to interject, you talk about debt, and that's the great thing about the Decred system is it doesn't work from a debt model. It works from what you actually have what you actually have in there. If the money isn't in the treasury, guess what? You don't get paid. It really is as simple as that. And I don't know about you, but that to me is how I would run. That's how I'd run my family household and my family spending. And why we would apply any other model to any other principle, kind of, it doesn't make any sense to me, really. But yeah, sorry, Exis, I interrupted.
Sorry, no, that's great. You brought up Politeia to help refresh kind of what we've got going on right now. They are working on BTC Pay Server, though I read they might need to make some internal changes because Decred's a little bit different than Litecoin and Bitcoin. There has been some work on Cake Wallet, and I believe there were some issues with the iOS version, but they're fixing that. So there's good progress being made across the board. And then obviously we started the episode by showcasing Monero's. It's coming along. And yeah.
I don't know. Let me just bring the Monero one up again, because when we showed this, we had like 20 people watching. Now we've got 228 people watching. So it might be worth just kind of saying, look, this is the repo from GitHub that's been going on for Bison Wallet DCR DEX. And as of 2 weeks ago, they've started testing the Monero full node wallet. I'm not sure if it's a pruned wallet or a full node. I believe it's not pruned. I believe it is full node. And for anyone wanting to do market making stuff, that's probably the one that you're going to want to use. But we always get these questions: when's Monero coming? And as you can see, it's getting there, And I also made the point that in the Decred community, most people, from my understanding, that are long-term supporters of Decred, they do tend to hold 3 coins, and that is Decred, Monero, and Bitcoin. So it's a very welcomed integration, and it'll be interesting to see how long this takes. I suspect we're still at least 6 months away, if not a little bit longer. But progress is happening, so it's good.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to when they get Monero working, and hopefully we really boost Bison Wallet to these other communities and can get people excited. And Monero has quite a big ecosystem, and they have a lot of different media. They have podcasts, they have live streams, and getting this on there, I think, would be a great boon for Decred. So looking forward to that. And like we've kind of discussed in the past, maybe a proposal on their CCS system would be cool. But obviously, that's up to the developers how they want to navigate that.
Well, I said before the show, before we went live, this is something that I would personally like to kind of go forward with. And even if it fails, I'd like to put the thoughts out there and kind of the approach out there. So it's something that I'll probably be working on over the next month or so. I've got a little bit of time over this summer. The kids are at home. We're not doing school runs and college runs and things like that anymore. So I've got a bit of time. So I'm going to make an effort to put some kind of document together that kind of outlines the approach that I'd like to take with that. And I do see, and I don't want to harp on about this because if you missed the last show, we did talk quite extensively about this, but I would like to approach the other communities, the other treasuries, and get them to get involved in the funding, get involved in the developing, and get involved in the market making as well. And if that means putting together a proposal just for marketing research, I think it could be ridiculously beneficial, actually. So that's something that I'm looking at doing and putting it to the community and see what they think, really.
You said something about stablecoins.
Stablecoin summer. Now, I don't know if you've been following this. Let me just go to the other screen. But I don't know if you've been following this. But apparently, hopefully you have, because it's your Congress that's putting it through. Apparently, there's 2 bills going through at the moment that will enable companies like JP Morgan, and all the big banks, like I don't even know if Citi's a big bank anymore, but I think it is. But all the big banks in America to actually issue their own stablecoins. Apparently, some of these companies have already been playing around with it, but this will allow them to issue stablecoins. And there's been a lot of talk about this being absolutely huge, and this movement to the predominant stablecoin. One thing that I picked up on it, and I don't know if you've read any of this stuff, but one thing I picked up on it is that part of the bill says that they are not allowed to pass on any of their interest or yield or whatever to the customer. So, which I thought was quite interesting, because if anyone does stable coins on Binance or Coinbase at the moment, you can actually get yield of something like 4%, which is all right if you want to go down that route. I actually stopped doing it a few years ago because it made the tax side of things really, really complicated. When I do my tax returns each year, they kind of go over my books with a fine tooth comb, and having all of these daily transactions where I get like a couple of cents, it is like, it's hard to justify, unfortunately. But certainly in a non-custodial wallet where you're not kind of, you don't have a transaction occurring every day, could be quite interesting. But have you heard anything about that? Do you know what's going on with this?
Well, I haven't really looked into it. It's as far as USDC goes, if you hold it on Coinbase, you do get 4% return every year, which is pretty good. And if you spend USDC, you get around 0.5% back on every transaction, which is pretty interesting. I don't really know what to make of this. Especially, again, you already have USDC, which is regulated. It's been out for years. I think it's been out since 2018. It says it has a market cap of 61 billion. Yeah, I don't have any strong opinions on this. I'd be, what is this going to look like? Are we to have a stable coin for every single bank? Like
the guys over on Unchained were talking about it as if it was the stablecoin wars, but the biggest difference for the end user is not being able to get yield. And I believe if these acts go through, that will also include any other coin that is represented in America. So that will include USDC, but it won't include USDT. So one of their thoughts is that it might put USDT in a much stronger position. It might weaken USDC and open the competition for them. As a secondary point is USDC and Circle went public, I think it was this month, and they literally, from their public sale, they raised billions apparently, which was quite interesting. It was the biggest launch of a crypto project apparently, or something along those lines. But yeah, it's all heating up in the stablecoins, and I don't mind the stablecoins. If you think back to when the last boom was in 2021, when Decred went up to something like $200, at that point, pretty much all of us knew that was a bubble. So what we were trying to do is move our funds between the projects to safeguard as much of that profit as possible. And at the time, the hardest thing to do was actually get it back into fiat. The minute you took that kind of money back to fiat, the tax implication was absolutely huge. But being able to move it to USDT actually wasn't a possibility it wasn't a huge possibility, especially on Bison wallet, because it was only Ethereum. If you remember rightly, the fees for moving on Ethereum was absolutely ridiculous at the time. Whereas now, if and when we do get another cycle where we hit these booms and everything looks like a bubble, as it inevitably will, we do have quite a strong stablecoin market. So you can say, right, well, we know that Bitcoin is a safe haven. We know that USD is a safe haven. So you can move your money between them, and it's quite nice if you are hedging during boom times to have that option. It was one of the reasons I was quite happy that Bison Wallet actually included both stablecoins, USDT and USDC. And just one last point: the last time that we had the boom, it was UST, and if you go back, you'll find mine and Exodus's discussion on that as well, where it completely imploded. So if you were holding UST stablecoin, you would have lost everything. So all of those profits that you gained that you were holding onto, you'd have lost everything. So I don't know. Do you think stablecoins are stable now, more than back then when kind of
Well,
UST
yeah,
was
I think
running?
USDC is quite stable. I mean, they back every coin supposedly, but with a real dollar in a a bank vault. So, which I just know it's regulated. I personally wouldn't trust USDT, but I think USDC is okay. Obviously, they can go in and censor your transactions if they don't like you, which is scary. But yeah, what do you think of
USD
Day? What's that?
die, yeah. I
Day
like
die.
die, yeah, die, yeah. DAI. Um, I don't mind it, actually. I haven't used it for a while. For me, USDC has taken over in terms of that moving from and to Decred. Using USDC for me is ridiculously easy. You know, Coinbase, Bison Wallet, and it's ridiculously easy. It's not been easy lately. I mean, the markets for the markets on Bison Wallet are a bit thin at the minute, so that's something else we got to look at. But it's just generally it's easier, it's cheaper, and it's ridiculous. Have you done a USDC base transaction?
No. I would
That
like to
is,
see this good.
yeah, it's really good, really fast. Getting from Coinbase to Bison, well, to it's not Bison. What do I use? Um, I can't
I
even
would
think
like
how
to
I do
see
it now.
base on Bison Wallet. That'd
Yeah,
be an interesting development.
but it literally takes about 12 seconds. Whereas if you do the same transaction to Coinbase from Bison Wallet, it takes like 15 minutes. Um, yeah, but yeah, base is it's looking okay. I think I'd like to see it. I liked what we were talking about um, a few shows ago, where they were trying to integrate all of the USDC networks, so it forms one, exchange type, you know. And my wording is always terrible on this, but basically you have USDC from Polygon, USDC from Base, USDC from Solana, but it actually only forms one exchange type, you know, one pair, which I think that would be quite useful. I think that'd be quite good. What are your thoughts on Solana? Do you think that'll be the platform of choice, or do you think it'll be Polygon or Base?
I think Base is positioning itself. I mean, Solana goes down, but I think Base is really positioning themselves. Coinbase, for they're going really hard with the Base protocol. It's clear they believe in it. It's one of the reasons I think it should be added to Bison Wallet is maybe that could be a stepping stone, a pathway to getting listed on Coinbase. Uh, to say like, hey, we have atomic swaps with your chain that you hold dear. Maybe you could help us out as well. So, I mean, that's wishful thinking. But yeah, I mean, Solana goes down, so I think Base is probably a good candidate.
Yeah, I mean, Solana still seems very experimental at the minute. And I mean, I know the Solana guys will probably rip me apart for that, but it does still seem very experimental. And I think with all of those platforms, I don't think anybody can actually run a full node. I would I would hate to think what it takes to run a base full node, or even if it's possible. So maybe that's one factor that is ridiculously centralized. But then I wouldn't be able to run a Solana full node, and I definitely wouldn't be able to run a Polygon full node. Hence, we on Bison Wallet we use the RPCs, so you connect to somebody else's, and it's the same with Ethereum. It would be really cool to see a stable coin like DAI that develops its own lightweight platform, so you can actually all users can actually run a full node for that, which or even a lightweight client would be quite cool. In terms of USDT, I don't know what to think about them. Many times I've thought, no, this project just looks awful to me, and they're printing money left, right, and center. But they just seem to survive, don't they? They seem to have cleared up their act a little bit in terms of the reserves that they're holding, but then that's never been proven. But they've been around for quite some time now, so yeah, hedging between USDT and USDC is going to be quite an interesting one to see which one comes out on top. But I still think USDT's probably got it's probably still got a lot more lot more room to grow. So yeah, I can see stablecoins being a big part of the ecosystem for some time to come. And when merchants finally come as well, I also think that merchants will probably prefer to take stablecoins than they would initially take things like Bitcoin or Decred and things like that. So gateway drugs, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We're about the 50 minute point, 262 viewers. So well done. Thanks for tuning in. If you've got any questions, ask away. Always great to hear from you guys. I was going to cover a thing on the biggest leak ever. 16 billion logins and passwords have been exposed. But I don't think it got verified. And I think in actual fact, it wasn't as bad as the initial reports were showing. I think it was just the hashes for those passwords that got exposed. So I think that was a null event in the end. But if anyone knows anything about that, it'd be interesting to hear, because apparently Google and Apple were involved in that. But it doesn't look like any massive impact has happened there. So a bit of a non-event. And fantastic work, Dave C, for coming back online onto Twitter and putting your point out. And it really does help. It really does help Decred grow when you have that level of understanding about how things compare against other projects. And even, every time I talk to Dave, I learn so much.
Yeah, definitely going to be an exciting, next few months with what comes out with Bison Wallet. I'm not exactly sure how far along the mesh is. I think obviously it's very complicated. They are making progress. But yeah, what's going on in the world coupled with what's happening in Decred, it's going to be an interesting few months on kind of where we go. But yeah, the password leak stuff definitely. I think you were trying to relate that to kind of Bison Relay and how that's kind of metadata minimized and that kind of leakage wouldn't happen with that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, anything that happens where passwords and user logins get exposed basically highlights what we're trying to do here. In terms of not giving over your data into the next phase of what the internet wants to be, and everyone wants your data still, and it's only getting worse. And even AI, my suspicion is AI is collecting a hell of a lot of data from their users, even more than what the typical Web 2 was. So moving over to things like Bison Relay, where you have this accountless thing, and I'm putting together a video now. It probably won't be ready for a few months, but where it basically looks at having a singular account and what you can do with that singular account. So rather than going into a platform, signing up for a service, handing over your address, handing over your bank details, handing over every piece of information about yourself, with Bison Relay, you just say, hey, I want that digital good, or I want that in-person good. You scan the QR code or give them your address, or just click the tip button, and voila, no information about yourself has been shared. And it really, to me, is a ridiculously logical approach to what comes next. Having an internet that works more like an email client, where you basically have a list of addresses and you say, hey, I want to transact with that person in my address, and only you and that person know about that transaction. And even then, minimum data has been shared. It's incredible. And for anyone that's listening to this show that hasn't used Bison Relay yet, you really should get onto it. I've been testing out. Sorry, I moved on too quickly, but that was my train of thought with that one. But I've been testing out the new version. Have you tried it yet?
No, I've not got my hands on it, but it sounds interesting.
Well, one of the things that I know that Tivra was asking for is they've now got an invoice form. So when you, and for many people don't know this, but our governance services are moving over to Bison Relay. So we've got two. We've got the contract management system, and we've got Politeia. And eventually the aim is to have both of those services in Bison Relay, and obviously CMS no longer exists as a website, and eventually Politeia will be a read-only website. And that's what they're trying to get done at the moment, where you've got web pages. So in terms of CMS, what you used to have is a form that you could fill in. So you put your your invoicing lines in, and then you submit it to go to the treasury spend. And that's now kind of coming forward on Bison Relay, where you've got that same form available. And it's looking really good. There's still loads to iron out, but it's looking really cool.
Did you try out the voice chat?
I'm working with the developers at the minute. I won't say which ones, but to actually get it working for Mac, it's all there. So I can press the record button and it will record something, but it doesn't actually capture at the minute for me. So that they're just trying to sort that. Apparently it's a permissions issue on Mac. There's also, you can now also send images as comments. But when I do that, I get the white screen of death. So I think that's also another issue that they're trying to fix. But I've also turned on my RPC settings so that when the next version of Pong comes out and when next version of Bison Relay gets released, we will be playing Pong. It's been a long time in the making, but we will be playing Pong. It's going to be amazing. And I'm really looking forward to doing that. But yeah, it's looking really cool. It's one of the areas that they've massively improved. And I won't share it because I've got a few things going on. But one of the areas that they massively improved is the content management area, manage content area. So now, if you click on the download button, you actually see a list of all of the things that you've bought, all of the things you've downloaded from people in a massive list, and you can actually just press the open button or remove it. And it's the same for your shared area now. When you go into the shared area, you can actually see what you're sharing with people. And a lot of work has gone on there. That needed a lot of work. Actually, it didn't work properly for me. I had items that I was trying to share or trying to download that just weren't showing up, and it was being a bit finicky. But now that's all pretty much sorted, and it's looking really slick. So you can now share. So if you want to sell a PDF, for instance, or if you want to sell anything, you can now share it as a downloadable document for a fee. So you can assign a fee to it and everything. It's incredible, actually. Very, very easy. You can even select the group or the users that you want to share it with. When the new version comes out, I'll do another video just to show everyone how it's working. Sorry, Exitus, you look like you're fatigued, man. I've gone on and on and on. But yeah, that was
you're good.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about before we close this out?
No, that's everything for me.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get some people on. Maybe we'll have a talk with some developers next time, or some other community members. It'd be nice to get somebody else on to get their thoughts as well. But as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Are we doing a Twitter space, or are we going to leave it this month?
Yeah, I think we can try again. Maybe in about a week we can try a Twitter space. Maybe do a giveaway, cake wallet giveaway. I think that'd draw people.
Well, I can't do the weekend coming, but the following weekend could work for me. So maybe we could schedule it in advance, schedule a giveaway, maybe schedule for some people to come on and talk so people know about it in advance. The last Twitter space we had, I think we had 2 people join in. So it's obviously if we're going to do this and we're going to make it a regular thing, we do need people to come on. It's more for getting community feedback than you and I talking, isn't it? So
yeah.
All right then, man. Well, thank you everyone for coming by. 277 people viewing live right now, which is absolutely incredible. Thank you for tuning in. Always a pleasure, Exitus. You enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks for a Twitter space.
All right. Yeah. Take care.
Cheers, buddy. Cheers, everyone.